Welcome back to another episode of Sports Medicine on Tap. My name is Brandon O'Lyon. I'm sitting here at Neck of the Woods Brewing Company with a good friend, Dr. Frey. Dr. Frey, how you doing? And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, man.
We're back.
We're back. It was a little layoff. We had a couple of weeks downtime.
Yeah.
So nice to hear that. Welcome back. I love it.
It's great. It's always fun, coming here tonight when I was packing up my stuff. I'm like, I feel like I'm forgetting something. It was only a couple of weeks, but I got to be forgetting something for this episode.
For sure.
Luckily, I don't think I did. I think everything's up and running, so I think we're good in that regard.
We got it all.
So I think we should start off, like we said, we took a little hiatus for the holidays and the New Year, so we got kind of ramped up with, life. Life happens, like we always say in this podcast, and
right.
Family time and all that stuff is what the holidays time is all about. And
and for some of us, jury duty.
You had that fun start to your holiday season with the jury duty and everything else like that. You know, luckily I didn't have any jury duty.
Yeah, lucky you, man.
So luckily we got away with that one.
Right, but New Year's, and here we are.
Yeah,
we're rolling again. Hopefully in action, and it'll be more of the same. We're most weeks getting the show out there, missing a week here and there, and everything like that.
And I think the biggest thing that, we're rolling into this year, we're going to have a full year of our YouTube channel,
Heck yeah.
So I think something I thought about too is I got to get better at just reminding our listeners, if you don't follow us on any social media, we have a very active Instagram. Follow us on Instagram at Sports Medicine on Tap, and also give us a subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can see the videos of this, where we add some, visual components to our things, to our discussions, and you can see our guests that we have on and other things like that.
You might be able to see my huge pupils. I just got back from the eye doctor.
Yeah.
Quick shout out to Friedberg Associates, my optometrist, Karen Levy. She is a magician, but I did have my eyes dilated, and so if you see massive pupils, it's that's exactly why. But going on, you're
just zoned in today, and you're just looking at me with
sure.
so much intent.
Yeah, you're doing all the reading because I'm going to struggle.
Yeah,
a little
that's
bit.
absolutely fine. I think we want to get starting off with just like we mentioned a few times. It's a new year. I think that comes with the most famous topic of New Year's resolutions.
Sure.
Do you have any?
No, nothing in particular. I think I go with the typical standard is just a little more dedication and focus to kind of family and life balance.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm always stretched in the other direction.
Yeah.
And I want to give more time to my family.
Yeah. It's funny. I definitely had a similar thought. Like I don't write any I don't have this is my resolution and I tell the world about it. Like it's not like a. Yeah. But it's just I think it's yours like a focus. Like you kind of put your attention to something different. And I think with that too, it's just kind of slowing down a little bit when you can, or trying to decrease your screen time when you're doing other things, or just little stuff again. But the main thing is to get within the family and just having the time when you're home to be home and other things like that.
Right. And appreciating what's good, man. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's a lot to be thankful for, and I feel like we lose it in the weeds, lose it in the details of the day and the stresses of the day.
Yeah.
And again, go back to Tyler Knight. That guy was impressive. Just being up in the morning and appreciating and taking that time, take care of yourself and thinking about things that are good.
Yeah, I think generally as healthcare professionals, we had to always have a back burner focus on our health. Obviously, we should be healthy to be taking care of people. I always take that approach.
Sure.
So definitely want to do that as well. But our friends at Magic Mind, who we've mentioned a few times on this podcast,
for sure,
are willing to help people with their New Year's resolutions this year.
All right.
And they have some great deals that, for our listeners that we can help them out with to kind of kickstart their New Year's resolution, get some good deal, and have I think they're up to 75% off your order when you order online with our promo codes.
Heck yeah, man.
So if you guys haven't heard about Magic Mind, it's a nootropic drink. It's a little shot. It's very small. It's easy to drink. It's a kind of like a good coffee replacement, in my opinion.
I agree.
And I think we already touched on it. It's going to help you focus on your goals and kind of keep you that laser focus on different things. And it could probably help to keep your brain from work life and home life, because you might be able to get more done at work and other things like that, which is going to be really helpful going into the new year and all that other things like that.
We talked about it, I think, in the last episode too. I think the idea there with the creation was to give you a little bit of that energy boost. So there is definitely some caffeine in there, but there's also a number of other ingredients, adaptogens, and what to try to help focus. So it's not like this jittery, crazy, high energy energy drink. It's more enough energy that you're not crashing, but at the same time still able to focus, still being that sweet spot between over caffeinated and kind of hyperactive. It's
kind of like an oxymoron of like it's a high drive, slow burn.
Right.
Like it keeps you
high drive, slow burn.
It keeps you up, but it kind of lasts a little bit longer. Is what I notice when I take it. It's like I know that 2 o'clock cup of coffee lasts till about 5 o'clock when I get home, and then it's kind of down the down the tooth. With this, I felt like I just kind of kept coasting, and I didn't notice that cliff. It just kind of cruises you off, which is really nice.
So I feel like that holds true with tea, which I think is part of this equation.
Right.
Is that it's not that coffee spike crash. It's more of that, like you said, that nice slow, nice even slope kind of so to speak.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I forget the name of the mushroom.
Yeah, the ashwagandha mushroom that they have.
So my younger brother, who's a little more into kind of supplements and herbs and that kind of a thing, was like you should really check this out. It's helped me a lot. And I take it for granted. It helps with anxiety, helps with focus, and I never really gave it a try. And sure enough, there it is. Winds up in this.
Yeah.
And we've each given it a try, and we were pretty happy with the way things had gone. But
I just re-upped on it, and I just ordered some myself. I want to give it a longer try, just to keep trying it to make sure like it's you drink one thing a couple times, you might have a little placebo, I think, but. If I tried it a couple times, I want to try to over a couple days, or just I usually don't overload it, and I don't like taking those like nootropics or different things like all the time. Like I kind of like seeing where I'm at baseline, but I don't mind a little octane boost every now and again. You know what I mean? Like
for sure.
So for our listeners out there, only this January they'll help you gear up to crush your 2024 New Year's resolution fully focused. You can get 1 month free when you're subscribing for 3 months at magicmind.com. JAN for January, Med on Tap. And with our code MEDONTAP20, you get an extra 20% off, which gets you a total of 75% off your total order. Only lasts until the end of January, so hurry up before it goes away.
All right, man.
That's one heck of a deal to start the year off.
Heck yeah.
That's great.
It's worth a try.
Absolutely. So now we're here, and, it was kind of interesting. We took some time off, and you would think that with that time off, we'd have a bunch of stuff to kind of talk about and all these. But not that there's a bunch of injuries did occur,
They always do.
Because NFL is definitely
full force.
It always happens. It's in the crunch time now. A lot of playoff implications.
I know. I love it. Unfortunately, the Eagles. What the heck?
Oh man, let me tell you that was a tough game. They gave us a good Christmas present by beating the Giants. We definitely should have, and then we should not have lost to the Cardinals. But man, our defense looks like a big old block of Swiss cheese.
It's a little bit concerning, right?
Yeah.
Like there's been a lot of turnovers, some changes.
Yeah.
Matt Patricia's
calling our plays now on defense. Our offensive play calling has been all over the place and very questionable.
Yeah. I like to think they're going to get the ship righted. It's better now than in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Of course, it's ominous, the timing. You're a little bit worried about whether that's going to go. And I felt the same pain. I do, again, I root for the Eagles, right? Like if the Steelers are not playing the Eagles, I'm rooting for the Eagles.
Right.
But if the Steelers were playing the Eagles, I'd be rooting for the Steelers, right? And the Steelers lost to the same damn team a few weeks ago. Same nonsense. Like, what the heck?
Well, granted, the Arizona Cardinals are whatever their
better than their record.
Yeah, they're way better. I mean, think about it. They had their franchise quarterback.
He was out.
He was gone for the first 9 games.
Yeah, James Conner.
And then James Conner was also injured.
Yeah.
And they had Josh Dobbs who started, who they traded away. They traded up their starting quarterback at the beginning of the year, if you think about it. And then Kyler Murray finally comes back.
Yeah.
And he's in, 3-4 weeks now, so he's kind of finding his groove, which you would expect week 5, week 4 of the normal season. But when you kind of change it up, it does change your team a little bit when you get a talented player like him back.
He's a game-changing player. Yeah.
And he's quick. He looks good coming off that ACL surgery. That's what you want to see. But
the timing of it is tough, right? The fact that they had those 3 difficult losses to good teams, right? And then, all right, Giants, you won the game, but it wasn't as impressive as you thought it might be.
No.
And then this.
Yeah.
So that it's like, And
it started off as like the offensive game that everyone wanted. The first half looked really good. We had some points on the board. Julio Jones looked like old Julio. He scored 2 touchdowns to start the game. We had a 99-yard interception touchdown.
Right. And
then everything stopped. And then we only played one half. And that's, second half struggles,
Right.
A lot of defensive struggles, and you get the team Arizona who wants to, they have that their fire in their guts, if you will. If you've seen that video of John Gannon, beginning of the year, he asked his team if he had the fire in their gut, and I get it.
Odd,
very odd, interesting conversation, but he willed his team to win and came back against his former team, which is a good motivating factor for him as well.
For sure.
And I'm not sure if we followed up on a couple things. Speaking of the Eagles, we have Dallas Goedert back, who we touched on before about his forearm fracture. So now he's back. He's wearing a pretty decent-sized arm sleeve, it looks like, on his arm. I think just very minimum protection, but he looks fine. He's playing well. And then
the Eagles cold protected.
Yeah. Man.
A smaller brace.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. They need to call our friends over protected to get a better brace. That's absolutely right. Because the Eagles losing, they kind of set up the 49ers to get the number 1 overall seed in the NFC.
Of course.
Which was a blessing in disguise for them because their star running back, Christian McCaffery, got injured.
Yeah, that's right.
And we wanted to touch on that a little bit because, he's one of the bigger names in NFL and especially fantasy football.
For sure.
Which, if we can touch on that too, our fantasy football is pretty much over now.
Most leagues end before this final week, and purposefully so, right? Like you hate to see someone lose a championship because their best player on the best teams gets sat because a team had it all locked up, right. So typically it ends the week before, and my team was rolling. We were doing really well,
good,
right into the semifinals, and
yep.
Yep. I feel like I am the semifinal king.
Yeah, you get almost like the Sixers. We always make the semifinals and don't go any farther than that.
That's right.
But yeah, similar. I had all my teams go out of the 4 teams that I have the fantasy teams in. 2 of them made the finals. 1 is still active. We actually have a week 18 matchup, which is interesting. It's like
very interesting.
2-week final. So I have the last week to get up some more points.
Right.
But I made the finals in 2. I won 1, so I did.
Congratulations!
So
man.
I got 1.
All right.
I got 1 out of 4 this year. Well, hopefully 2 out of 4, which would be nice. We'll see.
Yeah. That's a pretty amazing win percentage if you're able to pull that off.
If I could pull off half, and I made it to the Final 4 in all of them. But I tell you what, my team was cruising, averaging over 100 some points.
Yeah.
The last 2 weeks, I barely touched 80.
Right.
And it was just like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's what happened. Same thing. I felt like I was rolling. I had won 7 straight. I was like, my team is firing on all cylinders, and I locked up one of the first round buys, and I really felt like that was a good team. And then I could see it coming. Like you see your matchups, and I was like, oh, good defense. Oh, good defense. Oh, good defense. Oh, good defense. And then someone gets hurt in like the first 4 minutes of the game. You're like, oh no. Yeah.
I had T.J. Hawkinson who tore his ACL. Go down.
Right.
That changes your whole dynamic if you top tight end of the whole year and then goes down late.
And then I also in the wrestle background, so to speak, right? Like playing for 3rd or 4th.
Right.
Same thing, man.
Goodness.
They just crashed again. So
I
finished out of the money.
Yeah, very similar thing. Like all my teams just kind of crashed right at the end. One team did well, and hopefully my other team does. You got
at least one win.
I got
maybe
one.
2.
Yeah, maybe 2. But to go back on Christian McCaffrey, so just a little background. He left in the 3rd quarter of the game on Sunday, and he was seen on the sideline doing a bunch of different things.
Sure.
It's funny, when we were just talking pregame, I looked up at the TVs here, and they had a little clip of him getting like kinesio tape on his calf and getting stretched out and other things like that on the sideline. He was doing some it looked like he was doing some warm-ups, like some A skips, some B skips on the sideline, bouncing around a little bit, but they held him out. He didn't go back in. So another fantasy football, that's tough, and he could be a finalist in the championship, and he goes down and goes out early.
MVP of the NFL.
And Christian McCaffrey's having one of those years where like he finally doesn't get hurt all year. Oh, week 17,
can't do it.
Nah, but because they have the number 1 seed, they have about 3 weeks off.
Yeah.
Well, he has about 3 weeks off. This week 18 matchup doesn't change anything for them. So he doesn't have to play, and then they have a bye week, and then he has the next game would be that divisional round.
Right.
So he has about 3 weeks off for what they're calling a very minor calf strain. So
I think he's going to be fine, man.
Yeah.
If it is, minor calf strain, like they were saying, 3 weeks is typically enough. However, they're a nuisance.
Yeah.
Right. Like they can be a
bothersome.
Real problem. Let's talk about Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Right. Like wasn't that what happened? We talked about this just a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
In his preseason, he had a calf strain. took a little bit of time, kind of backed off, and play number 4
Right.
of the whole season.
Big play 4, right?
Yeah. So we're not. I'm certainly not trying to indicate that
No.
he's destined for that particular type of an injury.
Right.
He's, that he's tearing his Achilles, but it just underscores the fact that they're pretty unpredictable injuries, right? Like in all probability, minor calf strain, 3 weeks, literally 3 weeks of rest. He should be fine.
Yeah.
He really should be not unaffected, unimpacted, which stinks for the Eagles because, man, that is a good team. And they're not the same team without McCaffery playing.
Right. Yeah, he's definitely a game changer. And like you said, the nuisance behind the calf strains the calf strains is that they're just that muscle is so dynamic and so responsible for so much force production to get you down a field, all the agility that he does, quick in the cutting.
Right.
And you don't want to, not taking away from Aaron Rodgers, but, his position is much different than Christian McCaffrey. There's a lot more force generation going through his calves.
Right.
But, I mean, he got injured on a very simple play.
Yeah.
Obviously body types different, age is a factor as well. And same thing when we talked about Joe Burrow in the beginning of the season, who was coming on a calf strain. And you can limit what a quarterback does, but you can't limit what a running back does. He's got to run the ball. He's got to be elusive, and he catches the ball. He does everything. He just racks up the yards from the scrimmage line. So we'll see. I mean, I think I agree with you in that it's going to be pretty fine, but
in all probability it'll be okay.
But there's that little small possibility in the background of this could linger, or it could it could get worse,
and his history is that he's injury prone.
And it just came to me thinking about basketball related stuff is that Kevin Durant had the calf injury back in the finals, and then he ended up having the Achilles injury thereafter, because it seemed like he kind of waited, kind of pushed it a little too quick. In hindsight, 2020, of course. But, I mean, like you said, you can feel kind of good, but the integrity of the muscle is a little different. That muscle tendon could be a little – the relationship is a little off, so the tendon might take more force. And next thing you know, it pops or whatever the case is.
Speaking of Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, so since the last time we talked, right, we had Dr. Brand on. We talked about Aaron Rodgers, and then there was this speculation he was coming back, but the Jets kind of chose their destiny a little different.
That's the right choice, man.
Yeah, smart, right? If you wanted to get a couple more years out of him like he wants to do, give him the rest. Right. It was reported that he's done for the season now. He's on the 53-man roster because it's part of his rehab to kind of do like field-related things and whatnot.
I didn't quite understand that. I didn't. I guess maybe if they're not making the playoffs anyway, it's okay. Right. But still, there's someone on the other end of that takes a hit.
There's some unfortunate, probably like a special teamer, some backup linebacker, running back, receiver, somebody who's out there who got waived, because Aaron Rodgers is coming back for his rehab assignment.
But from the focus of the Jets, he's a bigger part of their future.
Correct.
So I guess they want him back to be participating the way that he can. Right. So I get it.
So a couple things to watch with the playoffs coming up with Christian McCaffrey, and then go from there. And another to touch on I briefly talked about basketball. Ironically, the Sixers are playing the Chicago Bulls tonight.
Oh, yeah.
And we wanted to talk about one of the Chicago Bulls players on the injured list.
Right.
We're going to talk about a little bit more about Lonzo Ball, who was reported right before New Year's that he's now pain-free.
Yeah.
And for anyone who doesn't know anything about Lonzo Ball, his injury, if you will, I'll give you a little background.
Please do.
So it's kind of a longer story, and this is kind of why we kind of out of the blue for the most part for what we usually talk about.
Sure.
But so we're going to go back 2 years now, January 20th of 2022. It was reported that he had a small meniscus tear in his left knee. And on that same day that it was reported, he was also scheduled to have surgery. And they said, he'll be back in 6 to 8 weeks, no problems. And I mean, in our world,
just a meniscus.
Meniscus tear, sure, 6 to 8 weeks sounds totally normal.
Always like that.
Sometimes you're right, it's not happening. So about fast forward 10 weeks, he gets put on the injured reserve for the rest of the season due to knee pain. He's still having some persistent knee pain. So again, that's kind of common with when the downside or the negative turnout of a meniscus injury or a surgery. He's still having that persistent pain, which we've seen plenty of times.
Yep. It's not the standard, but it's not that unusual.
Right, correct. And then in the preseason of the 2022-23 season, he had an arthroscopic debridement of the knee in hopes that he would come back in another 6 to 10 week time window.
Quick, easy recovery.
Quick, easy. And then it just, every time he did the high velocity stuff, he this pain was like the biggest thing that they kept reporting, and he couldn't get past a certain point in his return to play process.
Sure.
So then fast forward a little bit more, we're taking all the way back to March of 23 of last year. he had a third surgery on this knee, and he had a cartilage replacement.
Whoa.
Cartilage transplant, excuse me.
Yeah.
Now,
this is very different.
Yeah, way different than your run-of-the-mill meniscus tear surgery, right? Like this is
or
way
even
more
a cleanup.
Right. Way more intense. And we kind of never talked about this when it first occurred. It just kind of happened. And then a couple months later, on our episode 72, I believe, we talked about this procedure with Gabriel Landeskog, an NHL player, who has it. And Lonzo Ball is basically 2 months ahead of him in the recovery process. And then right before the new year hit, it came out that Lonzo Ball is now pain-free. The pain has been eliminated from his knee with the new procedure, and he's doing really well in his rehab.
That's good news.
And then he's going to be running January, so he's going to start running this month, which is really good for news reporting wise. And then also it's like this is a big step because this is kind of like it sounded like reading the information online that this is where he's always kind of had the hiccup and had some reoccurring pain and whatnot. So very interesting timeline.
So going into this, like you were saying, he was able to walk around and be, do everyday what we call activities of daily living, everyday sort of stuff without a whole lot of pain. However, when he tried to push it, when the stress level increased as he got back on the court, he wasn't able to do that. He wasn't able to perform at that level. So I guess he's back to that crossroad. And then the big question here is he going to be able to cross that threshold and kind of continue to ramp up without a problem, or is it gonna take him back down again? And we go through the disclaimer pretty much every show. We don't have access to his medical records.
Correct.
We don't know definitively what procedure it was that he had. And there's a lot of them out there.
Right.
And there's a lot of nuance to these procedures. But there isn't much of a track record out there for people returning to sports, especially on this level with some of these procedures. So this is, a very interesting thing to pay attention to.
And I feel like just with that, I mean, obviously, like you said, there's not a good record of like high level return to play with these kind of things.
Right.
But I feel like you got to put an asterisk, especially in basketball. Man, it's just that sport alone is just so much plyometric. It's short sprints back and forth. And it's just so much ground and pound on the knees. That's why you see people like, historically Greg Odom and like bad knees, big guy, Tracy McGrady, some other big names. It kind of happens like when you get the big guys with the bad knees. It just usually doesn't end well.
Right.
But
and it's funny you brought up Odom because he's kind of, I think, one of like the original popular, I would say, more cartilage restoration procedures as opposed to transplant procedures, right? Where he had a microfracture.
Yep, I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
And so he has his microfracture procedure, and so a microfracture in summary or in short is really someone has a fairly smallish or reasonably defined lesion. I try to draw a distinction between cartilage injury or cartilage lesion, which would be if the knee is the way I try to explain it to patients sometimes is, if the knee is a well-paved road, right? So a chondral injury or a cartilage lesion would be like a pothole in this otherwise well-paved street, right? Whereas arthritis is more of a cobblestone road, right? Like it's kind of beat up all over the place. We cannot fix arthritis. The quote unquote, we manage arthritis until you get a knee replacement. Like we don't have a solution for arthritis.
Right.
There's a number of different things that we can do to treat some of the symptoms of the arthritis, pain, stiffness, swelling, but we don't change the arthritis, don't reverse the arthritis. Whereas we are able to actually reverse or treat or cure some of the cartilage lesions. So an otherwise well-paved road with one specific defect, one or two, and you can actually improve that. So the original plan was, do this microfracture. Poke little holes in the area of this lesion into the bone underlying the cartilage in that lesion. And you get it to fill in with what we call hyaline type cartilage or fibrocartilage or cartilage-like material.
Right.
And there's this crazy protocol that people were supposed to stick to on a CPM, which is a continual passive motion, protected weight bearing, all this other stuff. And it turned out in the end, it didn't really hold up over time anyway, because it wasn't true cartilage that you were creating.
Right.
We've gotten better at that.
Right.
So presumably that's not what Lonzo Ball had.
Yeah.
Right? Like presumably, but we don't know what it was. What was the actual procedure that he had?
Correct.
And it could be a number of different things.
And I think with that too. I mean, this is way out of my scope of practice, but you can kind of have a plan when you go in there, and it could change a little bit. Like you would know, like pre-surgery, you have a plan. You go in there, you see some different things, and damage could be way more intense than they thought. But hope that they've done a couple surgeries on this knee prior to. They kind of know what it looks like pretty well.
For sure.
But
I have a suspicion, and it's purely guess, right? So I'm going to run through a few of the different options.
Okay,
a few different
perfect.
things that are out there. And you know, again, it's fairly nuanced. There are pluses and minuses to different ones, and I'm probably going to lose some people on some of this, but at least to give a little bit of a background, right? We just talked a little bit about microfracture, right? So,
correct.
And then there's something called an Oates procedure, an osteochondral autograft transfer. So that's using your own tissue. So you take a piece of bone and cartilage, a little plug, literally like a core rattle little plug, from one area of the knee where you don't need cartilage quite as much, and you move it over to another area of the knee where you have this defect, and you fill the defect. And that's good for smaller lesions. You can only go so big with that.
Right.
And then there's something called an OCA, or an osteochondral allograft. Allograft being, it's not from you, but another person. Same species, but a different person.
Right.
And so they take a little bone and cartilage plug, the same kind of plug that we would do in an Oates procedure, except you can go a little bit bigger because that person doesn't need their cartilage anymore. Right. So it comes from a cadaver, from a dead guy, and you core out this little piece and you plop it into the plug. Drill out a little hole, perfectly matched fit. Plop in this other little piece.
Right.
And then there's a few other different things. There's something called biocartilage. And right now, all of these products I'm talking about are from a company called Arthrex. And there's a number of other companies that do a really nice job out there as well. And I'll get into some of those. But biocartilage is another Arthrex product. And the nice thing about a biocartilage is arthroscopic. You can kind of slather in this little cartilage matrix. And you almost do microfracture and then slather it over the top. And it sticks fairly well. And you're trying to regrow better cartilage than their microfracture alone can do. But again, smallish lesions.
Right.
And then there's something called cartiform. Cartiform now can get really big. Cartiform is like a thin wafer of cartilage and a thin wafer of bone, but it's not this deep plug like the other ones were.
Right.
And it's actually meshed. There are little holes in it, and you actually have to open up the whole knee, so it's not arthroscopic, so it's open procedure, and you put anchors in and you basically sew that down.
Okay.
And the bone heals to the bone underneath. And then the cartilage fills in. You have like a mesh of cartilage, and it fills in the little holes with like more of this hyaline type material, this fibrocartilage material. But you have this other basis of cartilage allograft, which holds up, and that does pretty well as well, to be honest with you.
Right.
Then from there, there's something called Macy. Right? So a Macy, I have a feeling that might be what he had done. All right, and the reason I say that, so Macy stands for matrix-induced allograft chondral implantation. So essentially, it's a two-stage procedure.
Okay.
It requires two surgeries. In the first surgery, this is like science fiction. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I do them. They actually work pretty well.
Wow.
And what you do is you actually take a piece, like a Tic Tac sized piece of cartilage. Actually take two little Tic Tac sized piece of cartilage. You put it in this serum. You put it in a little container, and you ship it to the lab. And they actually grow that person's own cartilage on a little sheet. It's called like a porcine layer. So it's a pig, and it's a little layer, and you get back this sheet of cartilage on this porcine membrane, and then you go back second surgery after you've grown it out, and you take basically like a perfect stamp it out to match perfectly. Take a little stamp out of that person's cartilage where their defect was, and you pop it on in.
Wow.
And it works really well. It regrows their own cartilage very well. The only reason I say I wonder if that's what he had done is because he had the meniscus surgery. He didn't do well. He had a second surgery with the debridement, and in all likelihood, they took the cartilage biopsy at that point in time, that second procedure. And then they grew it out, and if you do well, you never use that piece of cartilage.
Right.
And if you don't do well, then you go back for your third surgery, and then you put it back in. So if I have to venture a guess, I'm guessing he got a Macy procedure.
Right.
But the truth is, I don't know.
We don't know. Right?
Yeah,
That's just our well-educated guess on what we think. And I think the timeline of that kind of stuff kind of adds up. It's like preseason for the NBA, roughly what they start in October. So you think September, August, maybe he had the debridement, and then about 6 months or so goes by, and then he has another surgery for the transplant.
Yeah. It's timing-wise, it's usually, I forget the exact numbers. I think it's a bare minimum of I think it's usually 3 months at the quickest, from the time of the first surgery to the second surgery. Usually you give it a few weeks to start to heal, and then you see how they're doing, and then really it's like you need a minimum of 6 weeks to actually grow it out. Where you tell the company Vericel, you say okay, you got to grow it, and then they start the process, and it's like 6 weeks until they can have the thing ready for you. There's another one out there. It's a different company. It's a Zimmer company called De Novo. They're called particulate or juvenile cartilage. And one of the advantages to De Novo is that it's kind of these medium-sized lesions. Like basically you can actually do like bigger ones or even like more than one.
Right.
Whereas De Novo, it's more of those medium-sized ones, but it's one procedure. So basically you have it there ready to go for your surgery. You can do it arthroscopically sometimes. Usually not. Usually you'd open and make sure you get it in and sealed in pretty well. But yeah. And it depends on where the lesion is, right? Is it at the end of your thigh bone? Is it on the top of your shin bone, your tibial plateau? Is it underneath your kneecap? They're like, we can do osteochondral allografts, and it's pretty unusual, but to have a defect on the top of your shin bone in the tibial plateau. Right. But you can actually put like a little, like almost like an ACL guide, which has like a little point and a drill that goes to the point. You put it on the lesion, you drill up to it, you create a hole within the shin bone, within the tibia that's, whatever it is, 8 millimeters big. And then you take a little plug, osteochondral, and from the bottom put it in, and slide it on up. And like you can do stuff like that. Now that's pretty extreme, man. Like those are like pretty heroic efforts.
Yeah.
I think that if you're a professional athlete and you're getting that done on your knee, you're probably not getting back.
Right. You might just get back to doing something.
We just want to get you walking around without pain.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is interesting. It is. It remains to be seen how he's going to do.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the same thing too. And I tried to look up some updates on Gabriel Landeskog, but it seems like he's up in Canada doing his rehab, and
that's great news.
I would say that the NHL is probably the most strict when it comes to reporting any, or protecting HIPAA information with their players.
Yeah, upper body,
lower body. Very very basic injury information. And anytime I looked them up, it just brought me back to articles from last May when we talked about it.
You're not going to find it.
No, absolutely.
If they do release it, fantastic. But
if not, by all means, it's his right. He can have it, and then. We'll wait to see. And it's like he should be hopefully having some good news in a couple months. Who knows? You never know.
I also wondered. Now this is different, right? Like this is sort of thinking outside the box now for Lonzo Ball. So he had the meniscus surgery, right? And was never the same after the meniscus surgery. So a little bit on that real quick. Right. So the way I try to describe it to people is, what does the meniscus do in the first place? And basically it's like a cushion. It's like padding for your knee. And I say, if you take a bowling ball, you put a bowling ball on the table, the bowling ball touches the table at one spot. You have a lot of pressure, a lot of stress going through one spot. But if you put a donut on the table and you put a bowling ball on the donut, it kind of spreads out that force. That's one of the things that the meniscus is doing, is really kind of spreading out or sharing that force, right? So you cut out some of your meniscus. Now you have a lot of pressure going through a smaller area again. There are meniscal transplants out there. The record of people getting back to sports after meniscal transplant is not good. And actually, I'm pretty fortunate in my career that I have a college basketball player that did get back, and I was, really in my heart of hearts, I doubted his ability to get back, and he did. He got back and played college ball, and that's the exception. That is not the rule. So if it had gone that far, and there are other procedures sometimes that we'll do at the same time that we do a cartilage restoration procedure, right? So if his mechanical alignment had him, he had more stress, let's say on the outside of his knee or the inside of his knee, you can actually cut the bone, shift the bone so that you change the plumb line, the weight bearing line, shift it over away from the area where they have the cartilage defect at the same time that you do this cartilage procedure. We do that all the time with the patella. You do something called an anterior medialization tibial tubercle osteotomy where you I know it's a whole lot of stuff, but basically what you do is you cut off where your patella tendon attaches to the top of your shin bone, cut right across there. You can actually lift the whole thing up, gives you great access, get to see the whole knee. Do whatever you need to do to fix the cartilage defect in the knee, and then you put that piece back on, but you shift it over. You shift it forward or anterior as well as a little bit more usually medial, so it's towards the inside, and it unloads that area where people usually get the defect a little more on the outside there. So if he had one of those other mechanical changing procedures, a year, probably two. Like it's going to be a long time before he gets back there.
Yeah, and I mean, hopefully in the next few months here or the next couple weeks even, we get some good reports or some video footage of him, running around or whatever.
What was the thing with
speaking of videos of Lonzo Ball, was in the process of doing this, just looking up some research, I came across an article from about this past August with it was like Lonzo Ball responds to Stephen A. Smith, and it's like, oh man, Stephen A. Smith has a strong opinion about everything, so might as well take a look.
Yeah.
And I guess Stephen A. was on air reporting that he was told that Lonzo Ball has trouble just getting in and out of a chair of his everyday life, like things are really bad with
Makes
his
me think it's a patellofemoral issue, right?
It's like, oh, that's not too good. So then Lonzo Ball responded on social media with a video of him standing outside and getting up and down doing single leg chair lifts. He was in a chair and got up on his bad leg, on his left leg, going up and down.
One leg.
And that was in August, so that was about 5 months or so after surgery.
Good sign for him.
And then I got into, how the internet works. Sometimes you just kind of segue yourself into different links, and I found someone breaking down his mechanics of him doing the single leg squat and whatnot. And, he still had some mechanical
issues. Was it collapsing a little bit?
A little collapse. Yeah. His ankle was a little unstable in the video or whatnot. But that was, about 4 months ago now, and hopefully with someone of these, a professional athlete, his job right now is just to get healthy. So his job is to go in there, do his rehab, do his workouts, stay healthy, and then hopefully progressively get better. And even he said, he goes, it's been pretty hard. Just to summarize, it's been pretty hard because a lot of the times he's doing the same thing every day, just the same strengthening exercises. But he goes, throughout the whole process, he claims that he's been getting better every week. Yeah. And he's seeing him, improvements in his numbers or whatever, whatever metrics they're using in his physical therapy.
Sure.
So, his optimism and his mentality has been really good, and that's reported by his coach as well, which is pretty good to see.
Right.
Even though he's been away from the team, but he's been doing all the stuff he's supposed to. Yeah. And the Chicago Bulls, I don't know the exact stats. I'm not all into that, but I did read that they're way better offensively when he's on the court with them. When he didn't feel like he only played with the Bulls very short amount of time before he got kind of hit with all these knee injuries. I mean, it's been 2 years.
Right.
Since January of 2022 when he last played. So they're gonna love to have him back. Because they've had 2 full seasons without someone who's been pretty good for him. So hopefully we do see him back.
I think that's a really good sign. One, it really does lean itself towards patellofemoral.
Right.
And for what it's worth, right? Like these guys, when you have a patellofemoral procedure like this, like your quad goes to mush.
Nothing.
It goes
right
to nothing. And so even in the best of situations, right? Like even if the problem is solved for him now and he's just recovering from it, his mechanics are going to be thrown off. He's gonna have some residual quad weakness, and it takes about 2 years.
Yeah.
You get 80-90% of the way in a year, but like it really takes about 2 years to be really fully
and I think it's like one of those cases where you take like 2 steps forward, 1 step back with 3 surgeries. He's done the rehab. He's gotten so far.
Right.
But all right, arbitrarily, let's throw some numbers. Say his first surgery, he gets about 85, almost 90% back. He can maybe do some movements, but then goes back, and then he drops down again.
Yeah.
Next surgery, he gets up maybe 80% because it's now the second time.
Yeah.
Then he dropped down. He's been out for so long, but now he has the opportunity just to continually build up. And really, I think with a case like this, it's safe to assume that they're going to pretty much wait till he's almost like 100%. Where in the world of sports medicine, you make some return to call, return to play usually. 85, 90% sometimes, when people functioning look really well, but, they might have a little bit of a difference.
But you're getting close.
But you're getting pretty close. Yeah. But you think he might, come back a little bit. And
truth be known, these procedures, they're really not geared towards getting an athlete back to playing their sport.
Right.
They're geared towards letting you walk around without pain and do activities of daily living without pain, and maybe be moderately active. Right. That's your goal, man. And anything beyond that is, the cherry on top.
Correct.
So it really does remain to be seen how this plays out for him. Right. And sometimes people surprise you and they do phenomenally well. Sometimes you do phenomenally well temporarily, and then the wheels start to come off. You've kind of seen the whole gamut. It'll be interesting to see. So he's not due to come back at all this year, right?
I'm pretty sure it's next season that he's kind of looking forward to that coming back next season. There's no real implications or from what they were talking. I mean, even with he's just starting to run this month. Right. I would imagine, like we said, he's been out of the game. He hasn't been on NBA court with lights on, in 2 years. There's a lot to like get up to speed with that. Like, yeah. And that's what I was just looking up on my phone. He's only 26 years old, too.
Right.
So he's at least on the younger side. Age is kind of in his favor. He's still, you figure he gets back before he's 27, 28. He still has a little bit of basketball left in him.
I think of him as like 23. Isn't it strange? Yeah.
Well, that's because kind of the last time you saw him when he was about that
point.
age. You know what I mean?
That's
like he kind of just went off in the shadows, and you just stopped hearing his names. And you know, LaMelo Ball was the one at least making the headlines, and then he also was injured. I think he's back now as well. I think he had a real good ankle sprain. Kept him out for a little bit, but so it's interesting. Time will tell, and like we said, we don't have all the access to all the answers and know exactly what he did, and can have a really predictive timeline. And we don't get to see his rehab and all this stuff and see his benchmark. So we only get to what ESPN and Twitter tells us, or excuse me, it's not Twitter, it's X. X. What X tells me, and what information I can get from all the different sources and what information. So time will tell, and we'll see.
Yeah.
Anything else we need to catch up on? I think we hit all the areas that we.
Kenny Pickett's still not back.
Yeah,
but you know what? They got George Pickens to try to actually play.
Yeah,
you went 2 straight. What? How different this season could have been had he been trying the entire time.
Yeah. It's interesting. And then I think with the George Pickens thing, I did see the video of Jaylen Warren blocking for him.
Right.
With the flip reverse.
Of course.
The what we're talking
Love
about
that
was
guy.
George Pickens was blocking, or lack there. It wasn't really blocking. He just kind of stopped.
Yeah.
And let the running back Jaylen Warren get tackled.
Yeah.
And then a couple weeks later, they ran like a screenplay to George Pickens, and Warren was out front blocking all the way into the end zone.
Doing his thing.
And it's,
I had sent a text message. My father-in-law, my brother-in-law, and I text pretty much during these games, especially whenever they're on. It's not always on here, unfortunately. And the week before that whole thing with Pickens came out, I was like, why does Pickens look like he takes every other play off? I feel like this is one of their biggest issues. And then the following week was that whole big thing, whatever it was, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, where he said, I don't want to get hurt blocking for somebody else. And then the whole world came crashing down on top of him. This is your teammate. You gotta play. And just like you said, Jaylen Warren's I'll still block for him the next time I get to.
Yeah.
And he did. And then of course I didn't start Pickens. He's on my team. I didn't start him.
The big week he had.
I'm not sure which way this is gonna go. He's either gonna light it up or it's gonna fall apart. And the only saving grace is I would have lost that week anyway, right? Regardless. If
ironically, say the one team that I won the championship, the team name is Easy Pickens, and George Pickens is on the team. So it was ironic. He was part of the name of my team this year, and he was on the team, and he helped me stay alive in the playoffs with that gigantic game.
Big week.
Big week.
So much talent, man. I just hope they can keep him focused and keep it honest.
Yeah, I think I've always liked George Pickens too, right?
Yeah.
I think I'm in another fantasy football talk of Dynasty League where we keep all our players, and we've always kept them since we did the original draft, say, 8 years ago, I think. We've been building these teams, and I drafted George Pickens originally.
Well done.
And then we did an expansion draft, and we added 2 more teams. So we had to protect only a certain amount of people, and George Pickens wasn't on my protected list, and I lost him this year. And that was, I think, we were all talked about how we were affected by the expansion draft. And I was like, I was really upset about losing Pickens, man. He was young. He had all kinds of talent.
All kinds, yeah.
All kinds. I mean, he makes those crazy plays, everything. Lost him. Maybe I'll make a crazy trade for him one day down the line. You never know. We'll see. Time will tell, right?
We'll see where it goes. Hopefully there was a little bit of a life lesson for him in terms of what he needs to do, being a professional. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because again, the sky's the limit for that guy.
And I think you don't want to have, especially for the Steelers, and not interesting track record of the Chase Claypool situation where he started off really hot. Rookie season was amazing.
Yeah.
And then he's been kind of going downhill.
Right.
I mean, he went to the Bears, and then he got traded to Miami.
Right.
And I think he got released from Miami. I think, and he got brought back to practice squad, all over the place. But again, you hate to see the wasted talent.
Right.
It's kind of what I was going for.
And I don't know if this is that was a byproduct of you got your paycheck and you kind of settled in, and you got comfortable. And then the Steelers have done a nice job of finding that talent a little deeper in the draft, that wide receiver talent. I think part of it has been they've been willing to accept maybe the more difficult to manage players, and Tomlin's a magician probably in managing some of these personalities. I'll put it at that.
Yeah.
Right. Because some of those guys, as soon as they leave that team, they're not the same anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I feel about anybody who leaves any Philadelphia team. As soon as they leave Philly, they'll win a championship somewhere else. It's almost happens every time. I tell you what.
It's not the same in the other direction.
Yeah.
Right.
But no, I think to where was I going with that? With Mike Tomlin, at least. He's been well known for being a really good, they call the players coach. Like, he gets really along well with all his players and other things like that. And I mean, he has a track record and the winning percentages and all that stuff to back it up, because he does really well.
Yeah.
And the Steelers still have a chance, right?
They do.
They do.
It would have helped if they beat one of those 2-10 teams that they lost to at home in the middle of the season when Pickens wasn't trying. But but they still have an outside shot. I think it's like a 25% chance. And I forget exactly the
scenario.
Yeah.
That's the most fun part about the last week of the NFL.
It is fun.
You need this team to do this. You need this team to win by a certain amount of points, and all these different things and all these speculations.
Sure.
But I also saw that something's like this week they have a record number of teams playing in games that have playoff implications or chances to make the playoffs, depending on
parity, baby.
And I mean, the one that's really interesting is the Buffalo Bills, right? They have the opportunity to take the number 2 seed in the AFC or completely miss the playoffs, pending what happens this week.
I think that might be the Steelers' really only chance of getting in, because the Steelers lost to Indianapolis and lost to Houston, which are two of the other teams that are vying for that spot. So I think it would be, and they're one game behind them. So I think it would be hard to leapfrog either one of them. I guess based on what I forget what the criteria is, but that might be that might be their chance. Buffalo loses, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, so we'll see. But man, it's great to be back.
It is. It's fun.
It's a good time. Looking for a great year of podcasting with you.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a good time. We have a lot of fun stuff lined up and good ideas.
For sure.
All kinds of fun upcoming opportunities for different things, and we'll keep everyone posted with that. So
speaking of upcoming, before we get to the final read, we got still off in the distance, a little sour fest.
But a new year means a new sour fest for Neck of the Woods. I think is what you're going for. Absolutely.
That's right.
And we have the date. We have some insider information, if you will. May 18th.
Yeah.
Put it in your calendars, folks, for the Sour Fest here at Total Turf and Neck of the Woods.
If your brother's getting married, tell him to change the date.
Yeah, absolutely. Change the date now. You have a good 5.5 months to figure it out. And I can attest, man, it's a great time. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm happy that we know the date now. Yeah. I'm going to go home tonight and tell my wife to mark it down on her calendar, because we took the baby last year, and it was a good old time. And we're probably going to do the same thing. It's like a big old backyard barbecue out here with the parking lot and the setup out here, which is great.
Yeah.
So, folks, again, May 18th, Sour Fest 2024. Wow, it's great.
2024.
Not used to saying it yet. So, again, before we go ahead and close out our tab, just want to give a shout-out to our sponsors, the Energy Lab, the region's premier sports performance center and destination, Neck of the Woods Brewing Company, serving us up the best beers in the area, and, again, Sour Fest, May 18th, 2024. Timber Reel Productions, helping us produce this podcast, audio and video for all our listeners. We're also sponsored by Protected, a custom bracing company that allows sports medicine professionals to have unprecedented access to 3D technology. With a quick 3D scan on your iPhone, you can have a custom fitting brace arrive to you in as little as 48 hours. This is a tool that should be in every athletic trainer's toolbox and sports medicine professional. You can learn more at www.protected. It's protect3d.io is how they spell their name, or download the app on the Apple iStore.
And we did that whole episode with them.
Yeah,
and truly amazing. Right?
Yeah,
like game changing.
Oh man, it's next level out there. Absolutely. Sure. If you don't know about it, check them out. It's Protected, PROTECT 3D. Check them out, and you will be able to see all the great stuff and all the testimonial videos about how great their products and how it just changes the game.
For sure.
Period. And then lastly, Magic Mind, our friends at Magic Mind, for only this January will help you gear up and crush your 2024 New Year's resolution. Fully focused. You get 1 month for free while you're subscribing for 3 months at magicmind.com/JAN, MedOnTap. And with our code MedOnTap20, you get an additional 20% off, which gets you up to 75% off. And this only lasts till the end of January, so hurry up before it goes away and keep focused on those New Year's resolutions.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, folks, and we'll see you next time.